And welcome back to Open Your Eyes. We are now venturing off into our second segment for the morning. 2020 Vision, improving communication skills. Now in with us, we've got Mr. Paul Lecky, who is the president and lead trainer at the Institute of Professional Development. I'd like to wish you a very, very pleasant morning, sir.
Thank you very much.
And Happy New Year.
Thank you. Jolly good New Year to you too.
I hope I communicated that to you correctly.
You have.
So, definitely a wonderful way to start the year in terms of communicating. I think when we learn to communicate, we learn to save, we learn to be better people, we learn to deal with our families the best way possible. So, I know that you've got a PowerPoint, but my first question to you would be, what are the principles of communicating?
Well, let's say communication is a contact sport. So if you're not connecting, you're not communicating.
Yeah.
So I think the main thing is to understand first who you're communicating to. What is it that you want to communicate? What's the result you want from communicating? So these are factors we have to consider.
Yeah.
You see, a lot of time we think we communicate, and your audience, or the person you're speaking to, probably think they understand, and neither have taken place.
And that's miscommunication.
It's miscommunication.
That's right. So, this is such a broad topic, and there's so many things I wanted to cover this morning in knowing that you were going to come. But I thought that one of the things that perhaps would help to start the conversation is how we could help people identify what their communication styles are. Because we're all different, and we communicate in very different ways. How do I know what type of communicator I am?
Jolly good question. Yes. Well, a couple of things you have to look at first, because when we talk about communication style, we also have to take the personality style into consideration. Because our personality style also determine how we respond, how we deal with people. Yeah, so we first need to understand ourselves. Am I the kind of person who get offended easily? Am I the kind of person who offend people without realizing that I do it? Yes. So when you talk about the personality style, I'm going off a little bit, but if you're familiar with the DISC personality, DISC, for example, a D personality, the kind of person who think about the big picture. They're dynamic, they're demanding, and they will communicate to you. That person will say, just grow up. And they do not mean it in a mean-spirited way. For them, they're telling you something good. Now, if you're an I personality, you get crushed.
Yeah.
And so one of the things is really trying to understand yourself. And I would strongly suggest that people look at themselves, what personality style. And you can do this on the internet. It's called
Enneagram, I think, would be a good way to do that.
Right.
But you did say DIC, and you told us what D is.
Yes.
I is?
The I is they're inspirational people. Right? They are the life of the party. Right? They create the party. They don't have to have the party. Yes. However, they tend to jump from one thing to the other. Today they're excited about being an engineer, for example. And tomorrow they're excited about being an hairdresser. That kind of thing. But they make good customer service people, for example. They're people-oriented. They're outgoing and they're people-oriented.
And then the C?
The C is more like your diplomat. They are the plus-minus. They are people-pleasers. So they like to keep things going even. Yes, so they try to keep the peace. They're cautious. They make good diplomats. Right? They tend to be reserved, but they are people-oriented as well. The C are more reserved, but very task-oriented. So they focus. They make good doctors, nurses, accountants. They are the ones who say measure twice, cut once. Right? They're very cautious. They don't like to be wrong, so they do everything they can to make sure that they're right. They ask a lot of questions.
So you have personality styles that heavily influence your communication style.
Yes.
So you left us, I think, with the perfect point where someone may probe more to understand before they move further. Some people may just be very direct. Some may just be more reserved and withhold whatever it is they're thinking or feeling. So we have all these different styles that people have, yet we think that communicating is so easy.
Yeah.
Is this just the biggest challenge that we have?
It is, in fact.
Yeah.
And you see, a couple of things really, and to really start, the thing to be a good communicator, you need to be a good listener. And listening is an art. It's not a natural thing, it's something you have to develop. Yes? Most people listen to respond. We really have to listen to understand. You see, when I speak to you and you're planning a response, you're not listening.
Yep. You're just waiting for
Yeah,
a
yeah,
break
yeah,
to get in your
yeah.
question.
True.
So you're
That's
just
true.
listening to respond.
Oh, wow.
Not to understand.
Wow.
Yes, you need to listen 100% in mind and body. Then you can respond.
How do you detect a good listener?
Well, people are engaged. You can actually tell because your facial expression will tell it. Yes, when I'm speaking to you, I can see when you're engaged or you're not. The way you sit, the way you stand, I mean, the way you gesticulate. If you fold your arm, that don't necessarily mean you're locking it out. You have to look at the shoulder to see if the person is relaxed.
Yeah.
Because some people, that's their natural style.
Yeah.
If you don't understand that, you think this person is locking me out, they're not necessarily doing so.
Yeah.
So it's just engaging.
So I love that you call it a contact sport, but because that's really where it talks about being able to listen as well as communicate. So the words come out of my mouth. Perhaps I've given it time between my mind and my mouth. Sometimes maybe not. But I walk away feeling that I have communicated a message to you. But that's not how it works. That's not the contact you're looking at. Explain to us the process that's happening.
But the thing is, I need to make sure that you understand.
Yes.
You see, when I communicate to you, it's not your responsibility to understand me. It's my responsibility to ensure that you understand. Yes? So I need to ask you not, well, do you understand? Because if I do that, your answer will naturally be yes.
Yes, I know.
So I'd ask,
That's a good example.
Hear it all the time, yeah.
yes. So I'd ask, well, did I make myself clear?
Yeah.
Is there anything I need to clarify? You know, questions like that where the person has to think about it and respond.
Yeah.
It's not a yes or no.
So in the challenging situation where you have not paid attention to the message that another person receives, how do you work on your own communication to make sure asking questions is very important, but we focus a lot on the words we're using, and I love your point here that that's only 10% of the message.
Yes. And in fact, this is very profound because
Yeah.
when we say that the verbal, you're only listening to 10% of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And some people might think you're crazy when you say that. But the fact is that you're listening to what you hear, what you see. So you're listening to my body language, the way I gesticulate, the way I sit, the way I present myself. Yes, all of this, my facial expression. 50% of what you're listening to is that. 40% is the tone of my voice, vocal variety and vitality, because you're also listening for the meaning behind the words. And that's why so many times you hear people, what I told you, and a person, well, no, you didn't. Because what you thought you told me, that's not what I was hearing. Because I'm listening to your body language. It's like I come to your office and you say, go ahead, Paul, I'm listening to you, and you're sending an email. You're not listening.
You're not listening.
And you feel it. Like as the
Yes.
communicator, you feel it.
feel it.
You feel
It's
shut up,
almost,
yes.
you just sometimes want to shut up and just
Exactly.
because you're not hearing me.
You're not here.
Yeah.
And so we have to be conscious of the message we are sending.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, we keep saying it's a free world, we can dress how we want, we walk how we want. And yes, it is. But with freedom comes responsibility.
Of course.
Yeah.
What message do you want to send?
Yeah.
And then think about the 7-11 rule. You're familiar with that? In every 7 seconds of dealing with someone, you're forming 11 opinions of them. And that's a scientific fact.
So why don't you communicate
Mr.
what
Lecky.
opinions you form?
Yeah, Mr. Lecky, you're talking to us and reading us at the same time.
Yes, you have to do that, actually. Yes?
Wow.
The thing is that you have to be conscious
Yeah.
that the opinions you're forming, you might not necessarily be right.
Yes.
Yes?
And in fact, you may not have known what perhaps even took place before. I love your cross shoulder one, because that's a very common one. I think people have now assumed that anytime you cross, it means that you're blocking.
You're shutting out a person.
Well, sometimes you're just cold.
Yes. And sometimes it's a style.
And
that's your
sometimes it's a
stance.
comfort. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is why you have to look at the person, the rest of the body language. How is the shoulder? Is it stiff? Is it, you know?
Yeah.
But you know what? There might be somebody who's just tuning in and want to be a great communicator. This is definitely one of those New Year resolution thing. Try to be a better communicator. So you start off with learning yourself.
Yes.
What else? Talk to me.
We're trying to soak up these tips, right?
Okay.
Well, first I would say start to develop the habit of listening. Right? Because to build trust, you have to listen.
Yeah.
If I'm speaking to you and you're not listening, I'm not going to trust you.
Yeah.
Yes? So develop the habit of listening first. And like I say, it's an art. Listen to the water when you're having a shower. What is it saying? Listen to the birds. What is it that they're saying? Yes? When you're driving at night, turn on the window and listen to the symphony of the night. Yes? Just listen without trying to respond. When you listen to these things, you're not going to respond.
Yeah.
So it's developing that art first. Yes?
And it takes practice.
It does.
It takes a lot of practice.
It takes practice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
this,
how do you know, just to get that point clear, because I think this is one of the errors that we all make, and we have to be able to consciously pay attention. I know that's one of the things I learned doing interviews. It's just, I can be prepared for the next question, but my next question may have been exactly what you just said, because I was I was constantly preparing for it. So you have to really kind of be aware of paying attention. And what are some of the skills that you encourage? Because you actually do professional training on things like this. You said pay attention to ambient noises. That's one. How do you keep yourself in check mid-conversation?
well, you want to make sure that the person understands.
Yeah.
So one of the things you do is you ask, right? Well, am I making sense so far? What have you gathered from what I've said? Depends on the conversation. Because you want to make sure that communication is actually taking place. Yes? And if you're talking to somebody who, you know, sometimes people start to talk and they develop verbal diarrhea.
Just talk and talk.
They don't know when to stop. And you have to break them. So you'd say something like, well, let me see if I understand you up to this point. When you say X, Y, and Z, do you actually mean so and so? Yes? Because you want to make sure communication is taking place.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have to be the one who's conscious of it all the time, because the other person might not necessarily be. Yes? So it's developing the listening skill, it's making sure, checking that communication is taking place, reading the body language, listen for the meaning behind the word. Where do they put the emphasis on the word? Yes?
That would
What
determine
type
your
of
response.
descriptive language are they using as well?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And how about things like rephrasing?
Yeah, paraphrasing is excellent.
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure, and so when you say you're going to the mall, do you mean that you're going to the mall today? Because I could say I'm going to the mall, but that's probably next year.
Yeah.
Yes? So paraphrasing to make sure that, yes, communication has in fact taken
But
place.
what if, because you've got this DIC, what if D feels that you're probably mocking because you're asking, when you're going to the mall, when you say that you're going to the mall, do you mean that you're going to the mall today? It could come across as you're mocking. How do you deal with that?
Okay, and this is the way I understand it. My wife is going to kill me for this.
She's probably
I hope
used to
she's
you
not
using her
listening.
as an example.
Well, we're in the same boat. Go ahead.
But my wife, I would put her at a low C. She hasn't done the profile and all that. But my wife asks a lot of questions. I'm in Belize City. She'll call, where are you? I'm in Belize City. Yes, I know, but where in Belize City? I might say, I'm in Brody's, and it's taking it a little far. Yeah, but which aisle? And
The mayonnaise aisle.
yes, but yes, do you want something? No, I just want to know where you are.
Yeah. But she pictures exactly what.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm driving from Kaya in the night, and it's dark. I don't even know where I'm at. Where are you? I'm on the highway. Yes, but where on the highway? I'm at Black Manatee. Well, do you know where that is? No.
What?
No. No, the thing is that she means well.
Yeah.
She just wants to know where I'm at.
Yeah.
But if you don't understand, you think that she's prying, she's interrogating
It would be
you.
nagging to
Yeah,
some
she's
people.
nagging.
Yeah, yeah. Or perhaps delaying. It's so interesting that you said that because I think we all have people like that in our lives.
Yeah.
Because you understand how personalities work, you're able to categorize that that's just a part of what she needs to
right.
build the information or the profile of what's taking place. But not everyone has that knowledge. And if you have very different communication styles, that's going to cause a lot of conflict there.
Yeah.
Cause a lot of marriage to break up.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing is to understand that we communicate at different levels. We
Yeah.
respond differently.
Yes.
And if we can understand that simple fact, then we'll take time out to understand the other person.
Definitely. What you just mentioned is very important. If we could take time to understand the simple fact,
Yes.
then.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, my question is, because the first temptation people will have, especially marriages, and I know you have professional and personal, is that you perhaps maybe would ask her to be more direct. Would you just tell me what you need from the supermarket instead of asking me what aisle or what time? What is the challenge? You're laughing. You probably tried that at one point, right?
It's basically something you would say.
Yeah.
That's the good. Just tell me what you need.
But again, this is where
Professional advice
Yes.
here, right? Not you and your wife,
No.
but just for the rest of us.
this is where understanding that we communicate at different levels.
Yeah.
Yes. That instead of this is what you think, but it don't necessarily mean that's how the other person responds.
Yeah.
So we need to take that into consideration. So you ask the question, well, what do you want? Not, well, just tell me what you want. Yes? But what? And remember also that male, female will respond differently.
Yes.
So we have to take that in consideration as well. Yes? So just ask the question politely. You know, don't respond to how you think it is, because you want to understand how the other person is thinking.
Yeah.
How do they want to receive this message?
Yeah.
What feedback do you want? Yes?
All right.
It's not really rocket science, you know, it's really just.
It feels that way sometimes when there is miscommunication. but I have to say this much though. I think one of the biggest challenges or one of the hardest experiences to have is a feeling of not being heard. And so this is why it's important that we all
Yes.
work on our communication skills, whether in the workplace or in your personal relationships. So we spoke of how to perhaps be more active in our listening. What are some of the other, and you said the other portion of it is looking at the nonverbals.
Yes.
So what are some of the things that you want to tune into to maybe know that your message is being received?
I think one of the most important thing is look the person in the eye. Yes? Because the eyes don't lie. So my mommy always said, look me in the eye and tell me that. Yes? You look the person in the eye, because the eye will tell you, the facial expression.
Yeah.
Yes? You can fake a lot of things, but it's hard to fake the eye.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
So, yeah, go ahead.
What about in communication and physical contact? There are people you're talking to, or they're talking to you, and they would tap you, or they would touch your shoulder. Is that a good way of communicating? What do you say to this?
You have to be careful with
Yes.
that. If you know the person well, and you know they don't mind, some people don't like to be touched.
Yeah.
And we live in a diverse culture, society. And so we have to be very careful with touching. Now in the Caribbean, we love to touch.
Yes.
In Central America, we love to hug.
Yes.
And nothing is wrong with it, but that's cultural.
Yeah.
So we have to be mindful. If you must touch, do it, touch between the elbow and the wrist. Yes, if you really must touch. But when in doubt, don't touch.
Yeah.
But if
Be
you have to,
conscious
yeah.
of it because it
Yes.
happens so naturally.
It does. And people can get really offended.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have to be very, very careful with that.
Well, that's a good clarification there.
All right, so we're going to pay attention to that eye contact.
The eye contact.
Posture was one
The
that you
posture
said.
is very important.
Yeah.
Because the way you sit, also you're sending message. Yes. And you know, people say I read people. I do not. But I can't, because the way you're sitting, you're telling a lot of message. You're even telling me about your birth order. Yes?
Oh, wow. Go
You're telling
ahead, tell him.
No.
Not me, but him.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
But just the little bit I know, he operates like a first boy in his family.
Like a what?
The first
Firstborn.
boy, or firstborn.
First boy or first boy?
Yes. So-
You want me to answer that right now?
No, I'm just saying you operate like the
Operate
first
like-
one.
Can I answer that now? You're right. I am the
Good.
first boy for my mother and father,
Right.
and the firstborn for my mother and
Right.
father.
Good. And your mother expected more of you than your siblings.
Well, I don't know. She doesn't
Yeah,
live
she
here.
does.
Yeah.
She does.
We won't say that one because it feels unkind.
No,
to
you can't
mommy.
say that here, but yes.
So body language
Yes.
tells a lot.
But how do you get all the way there? And that's the thing.
No,
Well-
well, that's the way you sit, the way you talk.
Yeah.
We're saying a lot about ourselves. That's why we have to be careful. When you walk down the road, you're sending a message.
Yeah,
The way you eat, you're sending a message.
that's true.
And so I think, you know, what you're saying and how you were able to detect that from his language is because you have the skill set to be able to know that's what it means. But for the rest of us, it may not be that I can say he's a firstborn or there were a lot of expectations held on him, but there is a message that is communicated that I intuitively recognize.
Yes.
Is that what we're saying? Because if I'm not a body language expert and someone comes in front of me, there's certain things that they do that gives me a feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's that connection. And so again, I go back to the message you want. How do you present yourself?
Yeah.
Because remember, I am forming the opinions based on my experience, my exposure.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but based on my exposure, I say, you're this kind of person. You could be completely different.
Yeah.
Yes? This is why you have to be conscious of the message you want to send. When you walk into a room, what message do you want to send? When you leave home, what message do you want to send?
When you leave somewhere.
When you enter the
When you
office
enter-
place,
yes.
that's a key
What
one.
What
do you wanna
message do you
send?
want to
Yeah.
send?
Yeah.
And so you have to dress appropriately for that. Yeah, the way you walk, the way you sit. You have to be conscious of these things.
Greet people.
The way you greet, yes.
Yeah. Or not only the way, there's some places that they don't greet you.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. So I think those are key things. I want to move on to the next slide because I think, to be honest, I've done courses with you many years, even before TV, and this is one I always remember in understanding the power of your voice and how that plays a role in communicating. Can we talk about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, this takes some practice, yes.
Yeah.
But the tone of your voice, because, again, you can change, you can develop that. Eh?
Yeah.
Thing is to record yourself and listen to yourself. If you haven't done it before, you're going to be frightened the first time you hear yourself. Because what you're hearing when you speak is not what your audience is hearing.
What
So-
you're hearing when you speak is not what your audience is
hearing.
hearing.
Yeah.
Because that inner voice, what we're hearing, is something different. And so most time when you record yourself first and you're listening to it, you think, oh my God, who is that? That couldn't be me.
Yeah.
Huh? Most of us think, that's awful.
That's what I think.
Oh, I still don't like hearing
I
myself.
don't like that. I really don't like it either.
Not something I like. But when I do hear a playback, I'm very critical of
Yes.
it because
And
I
then-
realize where what I'm trying to communicate may not have been effectively done because of
Yes.
how I
How you
said
say-
it.
Right.
Yes.
And this is why it's so important that you do that.
Yeah.
So you can now practice. Right? And there are tons of information out there when it comes to your voice.
Yeah.
Yes, you can actually train your voice for what you want.
Yeah.
Take practice, it takes time, it takes dedication.
Yeah.
It does. It
Yes.
does.
But you can do it if
Yeah.
you really want to.
So vocal training is one option. But if you were to give kind of just the people at home some of the basic things that you want to pay attention to, I tell this oftentimes to young girls when I speak with them. Try to pay attention to your voice because we are taught very young to do the little high
Yes.
pitch, you know. It's more, no, it's not more feminine. People have convinced us that it's more feminine.
That's more feminine.
And so sometimes when you want to use a strong voice as a female, it gives the people feel a different emotion.
Oh my God,
But
that's so
it
true.
is, see,
That's true.
Yes.
and it's something that globally I think we're learning and we're moving beyond and allowing women to be strong. But just to give people advice back home, what are some of the things you want to pay attention to? You have like meek voices and people who don't want to even say what they're saying. And then you have people that are really strong and you want to cover your ears. And
All right. Well, the thing is, watch the tone of the voice.
Yeah.
Yes. So depend on your audience as well. So you have to think how much you want to pitch your voice. Depend on the audience. Yes. You want to be precise. You want to be very clear in what you're saying. In other words, you got to engage the brain before the mouth. Yes. So what is it that I want to say? And speak slowly. When I say speak slowly, not so slow that people go to sleep between the words. But some people speak very fast and some very slow. So you want to moderate that.
Yeah.
Yes. Again, recording yourself will tell you how that's coming across. You want to speak slowly? Read the body language while you're doing so. So you see if people are engaged. Practice this before the mirror. Even your gesticulation. Yes, practice this before the mirror. And so be very clear, be brief. You want concreteness, you want meat in what you're saying.
yeah.
Yes? Learn to tell stories. Tell stories about yourself.
Yeah.
Factual stories. You don't tell stories about other people, but about yourself. Because to emphasize your point.
Yeah.
Yes? So you use real stories.
What about people? What about I mentioned about touching, but there are people with a lot of hand gestures when they speak, and it's always over the place. And
I'm a great example of that. I don't know how you don't duck when I'm talking. And I do try to control it. It's just sometimes I lose focus of it.
But it's that's some people we would say that's just how the person is. But is it?
No. Well, I'm one of those persons who have to remember to keep it down because I gesticulate a lot. Yes, and yes, you need to tone it down. You need gesticulation. You use it to emphasize your point. So it's not to replace what you're saying, but some of us are more animated than others. So just remember to try to keep it down some, but some gesticulation is good.
Yeah, it's a moderation thing. Is that what you're saying?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
What about making us? What about in making a speech? You're doing a speech to an audience, and while you're doing that speech, that might be you're there hanging out with your friends, but you're trying to bring across a point. There's a different level of pitch, or there probably be a different way you're putting that. There's grieving in the family or somebody else's family, and you need to address that. How do you go on one pitch for all?
No, no. And this is where I talk about the vocal variety and vitality, because the way you use words, words can be very colorful.
Yes.
So it's a matter of how you use the word. When do you raise the voice? When do you lower the voice?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we lower the voice for effect, and sometimes we'll increase the voice for effect. So it just depends on the audience what you're delivering. Yes. But it's being conscious of this
He
again.
just did it, You didn't realize that. I'm just saying, There's power even in a whisper sometimes. Yeah.
So it's just the effect. It's just like sometimes we pause. But when you pause, it must be for a cause. So the next word out your mouth is like the Sermon on the Mount. Yes.
Tough.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
I like that.
I do have to say, you have extensive experience in speech training, and a part of Toastmasters still?
Yes.
Yeah, which is kind of the speakers club.
Yes.
We have a Toastmasters in Belize still?
We have a Toastmasters in Belize still. I meet at UWI 5:30 on a Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
We spoke about it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so let's keep these final points, get these final points in. So we have spoken quite a bit about being able to take the time to recognize how we communicate, how we listen, and also how to pay attention to the person that we're speaking to. How do you differentiate the type of skills that are necessary in the professional setting versus the personal setting?
Okay, good. The personal setting and professional setting, sometimes different, however we're using the same principle.
Okay.
Yes. So I don't like to say, well, professional, personal.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when I'm talking to you as my friend, then I can be a little bit more loose, if I can use that word.
Of course.
Yes.
Well, why don't you show him if you were talking to him as a friend? And then we see
All
the
right,
professional
yes.
after.
Okay, I'm talking to your friend. Let's say we're planning a picnic. I said, boy, you know, I think we need to have some rum, some wine, we need to have tamales, and we need to have udut and so forth, and you know, that kind of thing. So we just wrap in,
Yeah.
right?
Casual.
Casual.
Yeah.
I'm saying the same thing in a professional setting. I'm saying, okay, now, let us plan this picnic. What are the things we're going to have, right? Are we very specific? How many people we're looking at? And what's our budget? Why would we want to have udut? Huh? Why would we want to have tamales? You know, kind of thing. What's the mixture of the crowd we're having?
Yeah.
And we get very specific and brief, because we also now looking at the economy of words.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that communication is taking place. There's no misinterpretation. So we're very clear.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of tightening it up somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being very specific about what you want.
Yeah.
Yes.
And specificity, I hate saying that word actually, is a lot more challenging than we think. Because we learn, I find that naturally we buffer things. It's what we call sugarcoating, but it's like, well, Mr. Lecky, you work in professional development. And I can go on and on and on. I've already asked the question, and then I'll come back and ask it again, or maybe even change my question in the end. Or I'm trying to be persuasive, and I tell you, well, this is what we need to do in the workplace or in the home, and it goes so far that I lose track of the points. But I think it also comes from a comfort level too, or even the opposite. It's a courage in being able to kind of just say what I need to say.
Right.
How do you?
So this is where we need to develop this assertiveness.
Yeah.
Yes. Because we're looking for, like you said, the comfort, acceptance. The generation comes into play here. Because if I'm dealing with a Gen Y like you are, you don't want me to be going around the mulberry bush. Tell you like it is. While I'm dealing with a Gen X or a baby boomer, and they probably want a little bit more. I have to go the story behind the story to come to the point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even male, female sometimes.
Male, yes.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to be courteous.
Yeah.
We want to be precise, because that will work for everybody, basically. We must be confident in what we're saying. And when I said, this is what we're looking at, I must be very convinced in myself that this is the right thing.
Do you adapt communication styles based on the person you're interacting with?
And is that a good thing?
I think of maybe like negotiations or an important business meeting. Let's say you're someone who communicates very directly, you want a clear message, and I'm somebody to elaborate. I want to tell you why it's important, how it became important, who else thinks it's important, and then why you should think it's important based on your personality and what you plan to do as well. Yeah. But that's how I think. Should I go into that meeting considering the fact that Mr. Paul Lecky is a very direct man and I need to just come in with the bare essentials?
That would be a good thing to do. Because remember as well, if that person is a D, for example, they really don't want you to be going around the mulberry bush. Just come to the point.
What effect would it have if I come in with my communication style of the why and who else and all these other things that can keep me going and maybe relevant, but what effect would it have on someone who has the very opposite communication style?
It could have a very negative effect. Because if I'm, for example, you come into an interview, I'm employing you to do certain jobs, and you come in with that style, I might decide I don't want you. And you might be a very good person. Probably all you need is somebody to tell you that this style needs to be changed. But as an employer, I might think, well, I don't have the time to train you.
Yeah.
Yes? So it's a good thing, good point you brought up, because if you're going to talk to someone, whether it's personal or
He could be your
business.
supervisor.
Yes, you should understand their style.
Yeah.
So when you go in, you tend to match their style.
So
Of
it's
course,
not changing who you are.
no,
It's just
Just-
effectively communicating to that
To that person.
Because your
Yes.
supervisor might just say, "You're giving me a lot of excuses. Just tell me why this is important."
yes. So then you plan for that.
Okay.
Yes, so
All right,
just
but this is
understand the style.
at this particular point. This is actually knowing your supervisor.
Yes.
But if you just meeting you, Mr. Lecky, and I don't know your style, I don't even know how to grasp the concept of communication, then what do I do?
Well, just be courteous and be concise, right? Brevity is important. So when I come here, I'm going to present myself clearly, right? Be very precise with what I have in mind, and at the same time be courteous. So I'm watching the tone of my voice as well, yes? So it's not just, well, I need to understand your style at that point. When we discuss a little further, then I'll understand more. But you cannot go wrong by being precise and be courteous.
Yeah.
Looking the person in the eye. And if you're reading the body language, you know, and I think most all of us can read some body language somewhat. So when you start to speak with the person,
Yeah.
you can actually see their body language, how they are receiving it,
Yeah.
right?
This has just been great information.
I know.
And there's a lot that I think people can learn from what we've discussed. If you were to, in your experience, and you talk with many different people, train many different people, what perhaps is the one mistake you see the most often that you would leave for our viewers and say, work on this, and you'll be better off than you were 5 minutes ago?
Oh, wow. That's it.
I know. But I'm sure culturally there's some things
Yes.
that just you keep on seeing consistently.
One of the things I keep seeing is cannot remember, there's a crutch word that we use which suggests that we are seeking for confirmation.
Like?
I'm trying to remember the word, which is no.
No. Oh.
No. You present, I would like for you to move this phone. No. And most time it's a habit. I don't think the people really realize that they're using it. However, it come across of being not sure of yourself. So you're seeking some confirmation, validation.
So the word no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said it just now when I heard it. Like I never paid attention to that.
Yes. So it's watch out for
So
the
we should
crutch
probably
word.
close off here, no?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. I got it.
Yes.
I got it.
But watch out for the crutch words because we use the you know, and we come across as not being knowledgeable. And most time it's just habit. It sounds like you're feeling for words when it's not necessarily so. It's just habit. So we need to watch out for that. And probably that's the most important thing I could leave.
That's the
watch out
Toastmaster.
for the crutch words.
Yeah, that's the Toastmasters part.
Thank
there.
you. And with that, we will close off this segment. And we do appreciate all the valuable information that you provided to us this morning. We can all benefit from becoming better communicators.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and our foodie tour continues. This time, it's taking us to Dangriga, where we have Yokha Resort, and they're in studio,
Smell it.
ready to cook up something delicious. So please, stay tuned.